Response video to Hythloday, I guess. Happens again. Anyway, so he has this question with a thought experiment, playing with the dog, with the same old ironies. No. In talking about the duplicity of, so I'll do that first, the duplicity and hypocrisy of human beings, and saying he's not a defender of that, and yet, like I said, he's playing with the dog, and you know what, the pig would like that too. The pig would like the same privilege of being treated well, would enjoy it just as much. It would certainly enjoy not being, tormented, tortured, and killed, let alone petted. But anyway, it's, so I've tried to explain that, by my calculation of the universe, the world, the sentient thing is generating all the value, all meaning, all substance, all relevance to the universe is, pointed right at a sentient organism. A sentient has to be in some way affected by something for it to matter in any way, to have mass. So value equals sentient times experience. And so it's just mathematics in the end. And harm is bad, pleasure is the removal of harm often, and if it's some other thing, fine. But yeah, that's the math. That's what you're looking for. Those are the integers, and now you're just putting them into the equation and doing the math. 3 plus 2 minus 4 equals blah blah blah. So his thought experiment is I'm the only thing in the universe, and then there's another human being. What creates any obligation for me to care about the other human being, so to speak? My argument is I don't have to care about him. Caring is not part of this conversation in a sense. It's, a word we generically use for something, that earns it, so to speak, often. And sometimes it's this emotional thing. But regardless, the point isn't caring about them. There's not an obligation to care. There's an obligation to derive peak performance out of your brain. Your brain's job now it's recognized what's valuable, it's recognized what the goal is, which is a reduction in harm and a maximization of pleasure, which is often the same thing as a reduction in harm. So whether you're utilitarian or you're negative utilitarian, it all comes down to the same thing in the end. You can't escape the negative numbers and the positive numbers. The positives, I say, are made by removing negatives, but it really just doesn't matter. Anyway, so that's the prime directive. It's just logical. You're in a numbers game. Your brain can logically figure this out from its own condition. It says it understands my own condition is enhanced if it's a peak condition, and that's a good thing for this sentient to be in a peak condition. And that's the only reason why it's a good thing is because I feel. Okay, it's not because my name is Gary or because I'm whatever tall and because of blah blah blah. No, it's because I feel, and that's why it's good. So it's good for any feeling thing to be in this condition. It's good for my brain to acknowledge that and to create more of the condition. The condition is the diamonds. So however you want to metaphor the value is in the condition of the sentient experiencer. So theoretically, if there was two people, I was only two people in the universe, and the other person was run over by a meteor and was suffering, it'd be my obligation to put it out of its misery, maybe. Maybe logically, sensibly, it was squandering or wasting suffering in a condition that is not reclamatable, and my duty would be to kill it, whether it liked the idea or not, because I knew it rationally and logically. So this is just a logical obligation. You do the probabilistic math, you figure out the number, and you say, that's what I got to do. I mean, that's the likelihood of best performance. Attempting to balance probabilities, which are very hard to balance. So I'll concede the point that once something becomes a probability, instead of you have absolute knowledge, the math starts getting a little weaker and weaker, and you need a rather dramatic mathematical differential. The differential needs to be more dramatic the more probabilities that are built into your calculation. So the more the math is broken by incomplete variables, the more dramatic the deficit in the math needs to be for you to be required to act, so to speak. But that's essentially it. I'd have no obligation to respect anything that comes out of their mouth in terms of a philosophy or anything they say or any of that crap. My only obligation is not to exploit them and to do whatever I can do to force them or oblige them not to be an asshole and create unnecessary harm. But I mean, obviously harm is the value. It's the negative value. Or pleasure is the positive value, however you want to look at it. And that's it. You're either making diamonds or you're breaking diamonds. And the game goal, rationally, is to make more diamonds in your life than you broke. And it's just logical. It's just sensible understanding that that's the way the math works. The positive number is good, the negative number is bad. Once you know that as a certainty, the obligation is just built out of knowledge of that fact. So once you know this is the good thing, is this comfort thing, and the bad thing is the discomfort thing, it doesn't matter whose brain the discomfort's in, it doesn't matter where it's experienced, it just matters that it's experienced, because you know categorically that there's no category difference, that the experience is happening, that the organism fits the necessary components, and you have knowledge of that, just as we can have knowledge that a paramecium doesn't have the constituent categorical features. It doesn't have neurology, it doesn't have any potential to feel in any way that we understand sentience, certainly, and we have no expectation that it could develop such a capacity without the extensive neurology we have, because that's why we have such extensive neurology. It's exactly due to manifest that capacity to create the projector and the screen, as I've described before, to create the illusion of the victim inside the brain, so the neurology can create the idea of a true and real value. And again, that's the irony of all of this, is that the brain is always going to be a synthetic object attempting to model the universe and to model value, right? In a cold universe, nothing has, the universe starts off, life starts off with no, in a valueless universe. So the crude life forms, the first ones before they became sentient, right before they became sentient, there was no real value in the universe, and it was because of the necessity to create it, to create the necessity of applying intelligence and rewarding good behavior versus bad behavior, to create the idea of a reward. The biology had to actually create value. So to create this synthetic idea of value in a universe that didn't have it, it created the real thing. So it is kind of an irony, you know, that we're synthesizing in a model-making machine the real thing, and there is no real thing. Ironic, and that's why our whole existence is futile and stupid and moronic, is because we're creating the problem and then fixing it. So that's the problem with intelligence. Intelligence has no function except to fix things that are broken, to notice flaws and correct for them. Flaws from perfection. That's it. It doesn't do anything else. It just notices that's not perfect and then figures out whether it can fix it. It doesn't have any other function. So anyway, and just as our logic would be disabled if two people existed in the universe and we had no value, then there would be nothing to think about. There'd be nothing to consider, because there'd be nothing that would matter. Yeah, but it's probably enough. I can't emphasize enough. You're looking at this thing as if the thing has the value, and again, I'm going to argue that what's being argued here is the experience has the value, and you're just playing with the experience cards. You're just trading experiences. And the idea is to trade up, is to always advance the collective amount of harm versus pleasure ratio. So as to always improve the ratio of harm to the negative sensation. So anyway, that just made me think of the Flyora has been posting links to Tiny Chat conversations. So I'll leave a link to the latest one where some of this discussion of the value of harm was discussed. And you know, the guy used the Steven Pinker argument, you know, that everything's doing so well, and you know, because the number of casualties in war is less. And that's the joke of it, right? The casualties are less, but there's whole populations enslaved by, you know, wars, of so to speak. I mean, the Palestinians live in shit because of war. Most of the Middle East lives in shit because of war. So yeah, they're not killing them overtly as much. You know, we're not having... The slaughterhouses aren't as bad in terms of the crudeness of our war, but our war is still very insidious on the welfare of people, in the sense that we blow up infrastructure and we you know, force people basically into the Stone Age, which is even a harder kind of war, in my opinion. Brutalizing the citizens rather than brutalizing the soldiers, which is not an unreal distinction to make. I mean, it seems silly in a way to care whether one or the other, but it's kind of makes a difference, in my opinion. So the collateral damage is much greater, and of course we're always on the brink of some cataclysmic war that would completely blow up his equations. So his equations mean nothing, because one cataclysmic war, and we have proven that it's just gotten worse and worse. So that doesn't mean anything. And again, the overall welfare in terms of our lives, we spend more conscious moments in disability and in pain and in disease, death, than at any time in human history. So more conscious percentage of the life you live, a life lived, more percentage of a life lived is lived in disability and perhaps even crippling discomfort than at any point in history, because yeah, we died of brokenness in the past, and now we endure dying many times before we actually die. We've dragged out the dying process to preposterous lengths. So anyway, don't need to make that argument, this argument, but clearly I would say the balance of the equation is decidedly negative if you're counting the diamonds. Okay, so until next time.